Now then, Reform UK's two-day conference kicks off in Birmingham today. Leader Nigel Farage will deliver his keynote speech this afternoon, which we will, of course, be covering. But let's speak now to Head of the Department of Government Efficiency for Reform UK, Zia Yusuf. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. First of all, I wanted to ask you about former Tory Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries announcing last night that she was defecting to Reform. Just how important a move is that for you?
Well, we welcome Nadine, and I think what's really important is what she just said when she announced it, which is, and I quote, "The Tory party is dead." The Tory party is dead, and for those who are still considering voting for the Tories, there aren't many of them out there, but there are some, they need to, quote, wake up and smell the coffee. So the Tory party is dead. We wholeheartedly agree with her. She also laid into the Tories' 14-year record in government where they've done untold damage to this country. So we're delighted to welcome her. And look, we're at our conference now. It begins today. Thousands of patriotic British people from across the country will be here physically for an electric atmosphere, and we're going to have probably hundreds of thousands of more watch live.
So you're going to welcome her, you say, but Nigel Farage hasn't always been that flattering about her, has she? I mean, back in 2022, he tweeted that he'd had the misfortune of watching and listening to Nadine Dorries. So what's changed?
Well, look, anytime a frontline politician defects from one party to another, you're going to get some tweets that you can dig up like that. The most important thing is Nadine has said the Tory party is dead and has absolutely condemned the record of that Tory government. And so people obviously are entitled to change their views. She's also been very clear, by the way, gushing in her praise that Nigel is the only political leader in the country with the shoulders and the ideas to turn this great country around. And Reform offers something totally different. I want to say this too. If you look at our journey from 14% support last summer at the general election to anywhere between 30 and 35% today, the majority of that new support has come from people who didn't even vote in the last general election. So we're attracting people from all across the political spectrum who are disillusioned with the political establishment, who have failed and betrayed British people. They want something new, and that's exactly what Reform offers.
Labour are making the point this morning that in Nadine Dorries, this is the person who, when she was Culture Secretary, introduced the online safety bill, who's now joining a party that wants to scrap it.
Yeah, correct, yeah. That's exactly what she's done.
But does that feel like a contradiction, that you're taking on board someone who introduced a bill that you don't like?
Well, she has chosen to join a party and vociferously throw her weight behind Nigel Farage, who could not be clearer. We will repeal the Online Safety Act, which is an Orwellian name because it's making kids less safe because they're just going to VPNs, is what the data shows, and that takes them closer to the dark web and disables all of your parental controls. If you're watching this and you've got parental controls from your ISP, this new legislation means that your kids are much more likely to be using VPNs that bypass that. We will introduce new legislation, which will be a Child Safety Act, which will protect children, but it will not have a chilling effect on free speech in this country and crush political dissent in the way that Starmer is doing. More British people are arrested for speech than in Russia. I mean, that is the state of affairs right now. So look, we welcome Nadine, but we want to be really clear. The Online Safety Act will be repealed. We will replace it with a Child Safety Act that protects children but doesn't clamp down on free speech.
I hadn't heard that figure about Russia. I'm going to go and look that up for myself as well. But tell us a little bit more about Nadine Dorries, what her role's going to be. Do you expect her, do you want her to be an MP further down the line, or is she likely to get a seat perhaps in the House of Lords, something that she was a bit frustrated that she perhaps didn't get under Rishi Sunak?
Well, what we've announced and what she's announced is she's become, no doubt, a fully paid-up member. There will be a process that for selecting parliamentary candidates. It will be rigorous. We want the very best people in those roles, and nobody will get a leg up in that process. And so, similarly, for the cabinet, we were on the record yesterday saying we need fresh ideas in this country, and it probably doesn't make sense that all of the cabinet ministers, for example, the Minister of Defence, is also doing constituency surgeries about the chlorine levels in the local swimming pool. That's an important issue, but probably doesn't make sense for the same person to be doing both those things. One of the fresh new ideas Reform has delivered is that probably around half of Nigel's first cabinet will be people who have achieved great things in the real world, who are not necessarily MPs, who would then be appointed in the Lords and then serve a full 5-year term in that position with their own people in place to deliver for the British people with the mandate that if the British people choose to vote for reform, which the polls currently suggest they will, that's the way we're going to turn around this great country.
She's written in the Daily Mail this morning talking about her decision, and she said that we should be warned that there could be splits on the right of politics. Do you think that some kind of a tie-up with the Tories should be considered? Is she right about splits on the right?
There's absolutely no chance of that. Absolutely no chance of any sort of pact or an arrangement. Look, the Reform Party doesn't need to. That might have been a sensible conversation 6 months ago, but with Reform today, Reform in every single poll pretty much that comes out has more than double the support of the Tories. The Tories are going extinct. And so Nadine has been very clear the Tory party is dead, and I don't see any need to do a pact with something that's dead.
And Nigel Farage has spent the week in Washington speaking to lawmakers and not painting the UK in a terribly flattering light while doing so. He's been there rather than in the House of Commons. Was that the right priority?
Nigel is one of the most patriotic people in the country. Nigel was shedding a very negative light on this awful Labour government and, by the way, a lot of what happened under the Tory government too, which has led us to the point where 5 armed police officers, no less, were deployed to arrest a man for tweets. Now, whatever you think of those tweets, the idea of 5 armed police being deployed to arrest a man, an unarmed man, for tweet, the creator of Father Ted, a comedian, that is a kind of story you would expect to come out of Russia. So none of this is remotely acceptable, and Nigel was invited to go and testify. That's what he did, and he's doing a great service to the British people in doing so. He's incredibly patriotic, but he was there shining a bright disinfecting light on the awful actions of this Starmer government.
Well, yes, and yet he's been criticised for spending his time talking down the UK while in another country. I mean, some are saying that's not necessarily serious preparation for government.
He's not talking down the UK. He's talking down this awful Labour government, and he did that. I mean, you think about the number of air miles he's had to do to now be back here for the conference. No one works harder for the British people, and look, you can see that in the ratings. No one has a higher approval rating now. More people in this country have a favourable view of Nigel than any other political leader. It's not even close. And by the way, the more people know of him, the more people get to know him and see of him and hear from him, the more they like him. The idea, you know, the attack that Nigel is not patriotic is so ridiculous on its face that it will simply not cut through. And I want to reiterate, Nigel did the British people a great service by going to America and laying out the awful things that are happening to free speech in this country, that if they are not curtailed, we'll find ourselves in a very, very sorry state of affairs.
No doubt a very positive mood ahead of your conference. You're ahead in the polls, and polling also suggests that people are seeing your party as one that's setting the political agenda. So far, so good on that. But there does also seem to be some scepticism about how good reform would be if they were voted into government. According to YouGov, 49% expect reform to do a bad job. Do you accept that you have work to do to convince the public of that?
Well, which would mean, by definition, the majority of people do not think we do a bad job. Look, in the end, what we're doing is laying out to the British people a positive vision for the country. We haven't had a political leader in this country, a Prime Minister, with a real serious positive vision for this country in decades. Nigel will be the most transformative Prime Minister of our lifetimes if the British people see fit to elect a reform government. And we've already laid out our plan to deport illegal migrants, Operation Restoring Justice, in detail, years before a general election, which is very, very unusual. We are going to lay out more and more of our plans. I've just told you to. Another fresh new idea is how do we deliver the best possible people in the country to make the most important decisions of the land. We do it by having a significant portion of them not being MPs and being given a full 5-year term to go and deliver on that mandate for the British people. And you're going to hear lots more from us over the next couple of days and over the coming months and years ahead of the next general election. And the British people can then decide for themselves if they like what they hear and read, and so far they do.
OK, well, Zia Yusuf, Head of Doge for Reform, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed.